Hello, everybody, and welcome to another brand new episode of Cinemaholics. Yes, once again, I am not John Negroni. He is just too dang busy with something or another that he said he just couldn't see the movies this week. But I think we both know, you and me, the listener, as well as you and me, my guest, who I'll introduce in a moment, what the reason is. But first, the aforementioned guest is, of course, my co-host on Mad Men. It's none other than Michael Overhost. How you doing there, Mike?
Oh, I'm doing so great, and even better that John's not here.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I mean, this has become... I was going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I was kind of teasing him a little bit before when I would say, like, he doesn't come on for these horror movies. Yeah, so it's like, weirdly, we're getting, like, spooky season early. We got technically three, I guess, prominent horror movies in theaters right now. Three if you count Haunted Mansion. But right now we got Talk to Me, the new A24 horror film, premiered at Sundance, has gotten rave reviews. It's already got a greenlit sequel, as well as a prequel of some sort. I'm not quite sure if it's a feature prequel or a short film prequel, but that's neither here nor there. And we also got, from Universal Studios, The Last Voyage of Demeter, which is another of their attempts to cash in on the various monster franchises that they have at their disposal. Of course, this one is referring to Dracula. But, yeah, I mean, it seems like this common thread of late, where John is like, oh, I don't like to watch horror movies during the night. I like to watch them during the day. I'm like, okay, to each their own. It's weird, but that's fine. But of late, like, he hasn't been on for Barbarian. He didn't come on for Evil Dead Rise. And I think there was another horror movie that I think Cocaine Bear technically is a horror film. But like all these horror movies, and now Talk to Me and Last Voyage of Demeter, he just comes up with these excuses, Mike.
Yeah, and he has time. We both know he's gone to the movies tonight.
Right.
Even.
Right. Yeah, he has nothing but time. He's just, all he talks about is how he is just, living his best life and totally has nothing but free time right now. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's, yeah.
That is the first thing he says in every conversation.
Right. He just talks about that. Just talks about how he's just, got nothing but time, wondering why we're busy with work. But, yeah, I mean, I have to assume at this point that John is becoming a certified wuss. Unless he comes on forever the next... I don't know, what even is the next horror movie that's coming out? Is it Five Nights at Freddy?
Yeah, Friday Nights at Freddy comes out. I think the big one would be The Exorcist, because there's no excuses, right? I think for some of these other ones, there's always been maybe bigger movies that came out at the same time, but around Halloween, The Exorcist is going to be the biggest movie. There's no excuse for him. So the challenge is out there, John. I want you to see The Exorcist. I want you to see it at night, and I want to talk to you afterwards. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I just remembered Insidious was the other one I was thinking. Though I didn't get to see that one. Only you've seen that of the Mad Men host. But yeah, he chose deliberately. He was like, no, we're not doing that film. He shut it down. He was like, Joyride's more important, even though obviously Insidious made like 7 times the amount of money that Joyride made. But that's neither here nor there.
And if you also notice, when it comes to In Between Drafts too, John's always assigning out the horror movies. Really, to me and you, honestly.
That is true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that or put that together. But yeah, I mean, we got to get down on this. He's just, he's wimping out on these horror movies now. It's getting kind of concerning because, it's hard to do a podcast. We're not talking about one big, franchise or genre.
Did you see The Blackening?
No.
Do you know? No Blackening? That's not even like a horror comedy. It's a big problem.
He said he was too busy for that one. I didn't get to see that one either. But, yeah, I don't know. I can't remember the last horror movie you saw, to be honest.
Well, hey, regardless, I'm glad, I'd rather be talking horror with you, Will. Certified horror movie lover.
Sure. I love horror, and I'm pleasantly surprised in the sense that we're getting a lot of them earlier, at least this year. I mean, as far as we're getting like 2 prominent ones, as I mentioned, in August. And I figured rather than do separate reviews of those films, we'll just throw them together. One big review episode. But I want to hear from you, Mike. Which one are we going to do first? Are we going to do Talk to Me? Or are we going to do Last Voyage of Demeter?
Well, I mean, I guess, do you want to start with, the riches, or do you want to start with the one that I think we can both agree that most audiences are just not going to like very much.
Well, I have an assumption for what you're referring to, but you can. I mean, we both just saw Last Voyage of Demeter today. Like,
Sure.
we're both pretty fresh on it, so we could start with that since we, I don't assume it's going to stay in my memory bank for too long.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to start with the better of the two movies. Let's definitely talk Last Voyage.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so Last Voyage of Demeter, as I mentioned, is the latest Dracula adaptation, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Of course, though, have you read Dracula, Mike? I meant to ask that earlier.
I have read Dracula. I actually am very big on vampires. Have been since I was a kid when I read Salem's Lot. Or not Salem's Lot. Salem's Lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that is a vampire story, so that would make sense, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've been reading it this year, and yeah, it's not a super long chapter in the book, but like a pretty prominent chapter is the Demeter voyage, which is what Dracula takes when he's going from Transylvania over to England, and kind of jumpstarts a big crux of the story. But it's pretty, I mean, if you just look at it as kind of isolated story, it is a pretty rich idea for, like a bottled up horror film. Like you have, like these captain logs that we see transcribed in the book because they're from Russian to English. And we don't really get a lot of details about what happened, but obviously there are like no survivors as far as we know. And like it seems like a pretty horrific turn of events. So it is like, ample ideas here you can do for a horror film. But yeah, I mean, until now, we never really got it, which, makes sense in some respects, but also I am a little surprised that it took this long to do something like this, unless there was something like this before and I just have no idea or awareness of it. But in any case, this is directed by, and I'm going to butcher this name. I just know it off the top of my head. I'm going to butcher it. André Øvredal?
Yeah, nailed it. That's exactly right.
He is the Norwegian director who did you see Troll Hunter?
I did not see Troll Hunter.
Did you see Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark?
Yep,
a few years
I
back?
did.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably the most prominent, at least for U.S. audiences, I would say that's probably the most prominent film. But he also did another one called The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which is probably maybe the most comparable to this one because it's another sort of like, isolated to one primary location, a few like select characters, and you just kind of watch this supernatural event kind of transpire in a more kind of escalating way throughout the film. But yeah, with this one, we got a pretty, I don't want to say like there's a ton of like well-known names in the film, but you got like some people you'll probably recognize. You got Corey Hawkins, who is doing a better than expected British accent, I will say, throughout the film. You got Leon Cunningham, who people probably know best from Game of Thrones. And then you got David Dastmalchian. I never actually pronounced his name out loud until this moment. I just realized.
He's just the creepy guy in every other movie.
Yeah, I mean, he was also in the Suicide Squad. He was a polka dot guy. I mean, he doesn't always play.
He's pretty creepy. He's pretty creepy in the Suicide Squad. That's kind of he's like obsessed with his mother.
Sure, but he's also the one guy in the Ant-Man movies, the locksmith guy. So I don't know. I mean, he doesn't always play like creeps, I feel like. But yeah, I get what you're saying. He nevertheless, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty, I guess, like mid-budget bottle film. Again, another attempt to kind of cash in on these expansive horror franchises that they have, but try to do a new spin on them, something that's a little bit more artistic, individualistic than some of the things we've gotten before. But I want to hear from you, Mike, because I've been babbling on too much. What were your expectations going into this film, and what did you think of it overall?
I'll be honest, I wasn't too excited going in just because I feel like, vampire movies is something that we've gotten a lot of. Dracula is something we've gotten a ton of. And we also have seen it in a bunch of different genres, whether it's, the movie or TV version of What We Do in the Shadows, obviously Twilight, you even have a Van Helsing movie. So it just feels something that's, been done a ton. Also bringing up, the whole universal monster universe that they try to do, it just completely failed. I think, also the fact that they released this in the summer, there's all of these red flags, yellow flags popping up for me for a movie that I didn't think I'd very much like. But let me tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. I really like this film.
Yeah, I was honestly expecting you to not like it. I don't know, like the way you were setting this up before, I was expecting you to be a lot more negative on this film, which is good. I mean, I'm glad you really enjoyed it, and I would like to hear more. Like, what about this film really kind of tickled your fancy so much?
Yeah, I was definitely trying to, trick you with my intro, just because I think, Talk to Me is getting a lot of good reviews, and I don't think this movie is very popular. So it's actually the opposite of how I feel about the movies. For this movie, I just think it's very interesting that they take, it is a kind of like a big part of one chapter in Dracula, but it's still a pretty small part of the story of Dracula, right? When you think of the novel, you think of everything happening in England, you think of Van Helsing, you think of Renfield, I think it's very interesting that they chose to do this little passage and expand on it, kind of like a prequel to what's going to happen. I mean, the end of the movie kind of alludes to, maybe a sequel movie where you're diving into the actual Dracula, novel itself. But for this movie, I thought performances are pretty good. I love like the genre of horror where you're stuck in an isolated location and can't escape the monster. And, like every good horror movie has to have, Will, I loved the gore. I don't think they held back, and I also don't think they went too far to make it campy. I thought it was a very great, Dracula being a brutal monster, smashing heads, ripping throats, and I think also just looked really good. For what I assumed the budget was going to be, I thought we'd be getting more of a CGI mess, but the ship looked good. Thought all the water effects looked great, and Dracula, himself, themselves. I don't know if Dracula is gendered. I guess he's gendered. Himself looked really awesome.
I was gonna say, I mean, I'm pretty sure, I think we're safe to say it, Dracula's a man. I'm sure there's been other interpretations that he's been, woman or non-gender or what have you, or not binary, I mean, not non-gender. But yeah, I mean, as far as the movie goes, I think I'm kind of a little bit more reserved than you, but not necessarily like too, I'm not like cold to the way you're hot on it. I think I just have sort of mixed feelings at the moment, and so part of that comes down to, I will start with the positives because you've been very effusive so far. I do really like the cast. I do love, like you said, the way it amplifies its budget to be, very good about making this boat set feel really come alive. Like it feels like we haven't really gotten like an old fashioned period pirate kind of story like this since, like the original kind of Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And I like that it's, unafraid to be, a little bit more stoic. Like it doesn't lean into the camp. It's not winking at the audience about it. It's playing it pretty straight in a way that kind of reminds me of like some of the older sort of like Hammer horror films would, like kind of lean into that, but then, have these flourishes like you're mentioning of gore and violence and, just different details that really pop out. But for me, I guess where I kind of differ from you is that as much as I like the gore effects, I thought they were kind of muted by, darkly lit scenes that, like, obviously they take place at night, so it's a difficult challenge to work around. But I felt like a lot of these effects were underserviced by the visuals that didn't really complement them, and I wasn't really able to really see a lot of the great work that went into there outside of like a few touches and details. And there is something about this where I think it's understandable why it plays out like this, but it is a fairly repetitive chapter in the book. Like it's something that you kind of need some extra flourishes, I think, to really kind of prevent the film from feeling like it's kind of going into like a certain kind of rhythm as far as like mixing up a bit. Because like we said, it's a fairly short section of the book, and to play it out for like a 2-hour film does require a little bit of patience, which I think the film, it adds some things I find very intriguing, and then adds some things I feel like don't really serve as a story and kind of just pad it out to the point where it just feels a little bit dull. But I will say, like we were saying before, the commitment to the bit here, the fact that they're willing to just let this be a straight kind of no nonsense period horror film while making Dracula like, actually scary again, especially coming off of Renfield, where they kind of irony lace the film to the point where, I don't know, I just feel like that was also repetitive, but in a much weaker way. But yeah, this movie, I do, for as much as I do miss the sort of like suave and, kind of more, verbose Dracula. I do appreciate that they're willing to kind of lean into the more animalistic side that we rarely ever see. This Dracula in transformation, going out of his hometown and the protection of Transylvania, and really just leaning into like the brutality that can come from such a version of Dracula. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do echo a lot of your statements, but I also find myself holding back in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, and I think, obviously there is a little bit of bias here because I'm coming fresh out of it. But I just found myself throughout the course of the movie just being surprised that they went the certain directions they did, because I just didn't expect them to give us such a true to the novel kind of classic Dracula. I more expected a monster in the shadows-esque type story. But instead, when they started getting really brutal, I was like, oh, okay, awesome. They are doing that. When people started catching on fire, I thought that was really awesome. I forget the Mr. Jared, the first guy who gets possessed and headbutts his way through a door. I thought it was great that Dracula had that power over people, because that is Dracula. And all these other versions we're talking about, there's always some weird variation to them. And I just found myself really comfortable with the Dracula I knew, and was happy to see that they let it be that. Just be this classic monster. And it didn't really take away from anything. And it also didn't suspend my disbelief that it was like this classic character Dracula, right? Because that's the other direction you can go. It's such a well-known classic character that, maybe the audience checks out. I just didn't find that. I thought it was very well done for what it was. Also not an amazing movie. I have a lot of qualms with it. There's a lot of things I thought was a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that, but I do want to first, before I forget, highlight the actor who played Dracula, because didn't mention at the top, Javier Botet, I believe it's his name. I think it's just a really cool use of physicality here. I believe, if I read correctly, that he has Marfan syndrome, which allows his arms and legs to be a little bit longer than normal, and they use that physicality, and he in his performance really accentuates that, and I think some really cool and interesting ways. And as much as I would have preferred, I think, if it leaned more into the practical over the CG, I think the fact that they can work around the night setting and allow the character to really play with the shadows and come to life and take advantage of this location was definitely effective on both the actor and the director's part. But yeah, let's talk about some of the stuff that you're referring to as far as the ridiculous stuff goes.
Well, first, you bring him up. I just looked him up as well. Did you know he played the Mummy in The Mummy? So this is really his second venture into the monster universe.
That is true. Was he the Mummy in the Brendan Fraser one, or was he the Mummy? Oh wait, no, he had to be in the Brendan Fraser one, because Sophia Botella was the Mummy in the 2017 one.
No, I'm looking at his credits. He's credited as the Mummy in 2017's The Mummy. Just kidding. He's credited with Set. I'm kidding.
Okay.
I think, well, it's not as much that I'm kidding as I am bad at reading. Sure. But, who's going to fault me for that? Who's good at reading these days? Everything's a podcast or an audiobook.
Sure. Your brain's just kidding with you.
Exactly. Well, anyways. So I think my biggest issue with the movie is pacing. I definitely think they could have ratcheted up the tension. I get it's a long voyage, from Transylvania to England. Like, it does take several weeks. But with the deaths and Dracula getting stronger and coming for people, I just didn't feel that tension. It felt very drawn out, especially as more prominent characters. Toby, for instance, has his confrontation and dies. I just thought we could have really quickened up the pacing, really gotten to that finale a little bit quicker. And then also, I just found it so silly where they find where Dracula's, they're like, we know where the devil sleeps. Like, they find his coffin, or whatever you want to call it, and then it cuts to daytime, and they're all just standing around being like, what are we going to do? Like, what did you go? You know where he is. I'm assuming he didn't hide somewhere else in the boat that during the daytime. I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, that's where I kind of refer to like the fact that this has to be kind of stretched out and play within the book, where I think Bram Stoker's a lot better about allowing the naivety of the characters to come alive. And I think something I really do admire about this film is that we're seeing characters because of this period setting, because of their unfamiliarity with the lore and stuff. Like, it makes more sense to me that like, oh, like they don't know like the garlic or like the nail in the coffin and like things like that. Like the things that we would like a more, like self-aware character would really obviously lean into. I like that there is this kind of blank slate where there is more of a palpable fear because they just think it's a demon from hell. Like they don't even know like what a vampire really is. But yeah, I mean, I do kind of wonder because like by that point, like you're saying, like they know that the sunlight affects the vampire and kin, so you do kind of wonder like maybe they could do something about that. you seem to kind of know something about him already, but yeah, I don't know. Like it's one of those things where it's like this has to be a 2-hour film. They have to pad it out, but yeah, I mean that's also the sacrifice when you're taking like 9 pages out of this like however many page book and trying to turn it into 2 hours or so of film.
Well, did it have to be 2 hours? I mean, I could see this movie being a tight hour, 36 minutes, cutting a little bit of that fluff out, tightening up some scenes, and just, leaving a better taste in my mouth than it did. And also, I'm curious, Will, when a movie like this like dates itself, like that this voyage is happening in 1896, are you like me? Do you just sit there and just think about what else is happening in the rest of the world? Like why these guys are like fighting Dracula? Like the Wright brothers are really close to figuring out airplanes.
I can't say I think about that more directly, but I get the logic in the sense of like, it is fun to kind of place in history, but also I just take this as, pure fantasy. So I'm just like, I don't really even know if the Wright brothers would be a thing in Dracula's world. I mean, not that I think Dracula would prevent the Wright brothers from discovering aviation, but then again, I don't really know.
What if they see him and that's what makes them think, because he can fly? What if he inspires the Wright brothers? That's a good point.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Because like they see, this winged creature in the air, and it's like, oh, they don't know what a vampire is. So it's kind of like, oh, someone else has figured it out. Let's also try to do it. Yeah, that's good thinking. Yeah.
The last voyage of the Demeter, the first voyage of Orville.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Anything else you want to really highlight as far as the production or the cast or what have you?
Yeah, you kind of hinted at it already, but I thought Corey Hawkins was just really good in this. Gives a better accent than you think. I thought if he had real chemistry with the little boy who played Toby, which makes his character much more endearing. It's always hard when you are, in a movie where everybody's gonna die. Like from the beginning, like there's no one left on the ship. If you're familiar with the book, there's one crew member that survives in the book, right? And he jumps off into the sea. And so the fact that everybody's going to die, it makes you want to, enjoy them less or not be as connected to them. But I didn't do that. I really enjoyed his character. I thought it was cool. This relationship he had also with the woman's name. Don't know what it is. I'm so bad at remembering people's names after I see a movie. But yeah,
I talking about the character or the actress?
Well, the character specifically. But yeah, I'm referring to her. I thought they had great chemistry.
Well, I think you're referring to Anna, the stowaway.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. Let's talk about the Loch Ness Monster a little bit. Do you think there is actually a Loch Ness Monster, or do you think it's just one of those things where people have just seen certain things and it was like before digital photography, and so because I would think by now, especially with the advancement of cameras, we would have gotten like a really good shot of the Loch Ness Monster by now, right?
I think there was a Loch Ness Monster. I truly do think there was some type of sea creature that was just really big and people saw and is definitely not there anymore. Like a megalodon type. But I will say I do not think there was ever a Bigfoot.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. But Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier to fake a Bigfoot. I guess it's harder to fake a Loch Ness Monster, but we never really got like, I mean, like the most prominent photo we've gotten of the Loch Ness Monster is that like black and white photo that could have easily been sort of duped. So I don't know. I mean, I think your theory is probably more logical than mine, but I don't know. I'm still not fully convinced yet.
There's a whole documentary about the Loch Ness Monster being real. Wasn't it called like Creature of the Sea or something?
I don't remember that. When did that come out?
I'm making a joke. There's definitely a Disney movie about the Loch Ness Monster. Is it not called Creature of the Sea?
I mean, there's it's not Disney, but there was like a movie in the 2000s called like The Water Horse or something. It's like about the Loch Ness Monster. Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, that is absolutely what I'm thinking of.
All right.
AKA
Crack the case.
Creature of the Sea.
Yeah. So what were we talking about?
Dracula on a boat.
That's true. Which, according to Wikipedia, I think this is a joke, but they say more commonly known as Dracula on a boat. I'm assuming that's someone having a laugh on Wikipedia, or is this actually called Dracula on a boat in certain regions of this planet?
It is exclusively called that on a certain region, and that region is X/Twitter. Is the only thing I see it referred to online.
Yeah. I do. Well, since we kind of briefly talked about Anna, I do want to highlight. I think her name is Aisling Franciosi. She was in. I don't know if you ever saw The Nightingale from a few years ago.
Yeah, I didn't realize she was in that.
Yeah. She's the lead of that film, and I think she's really good in that movie. And like, she's kind of like the one actor here who's trying to do a Russian accent, which is kind of funny to me. I mean, I guess because she's a stowaway from Transylvania, I guess it like makes sense to like have her be like the one actual Russian, even though like I guess technically they're all supposed to be Russian except for Corey Hawkins, but I guess it's neither really here nor there. But yeah, I mean, even kind of having to work around that accent, I thought she gave a pretty emotionally invested performance in a way that I think actually helped sell some of the gravitas of the story and prevent it from ever getting like too silly or ever too afraid to be grounded and kind of spooky in its own own period appropriate way.
Sure, yeah, and they never really let her be like the damsel in distress, which is nice, which a worse movie would have done. But they also like didn't give her much to do, I think, and she really made the most of what she did have. So I think you're exactly right.
Right on. Any other performances worth highlighting, you think?
The Sea was great.
She's a salty mistress.
And all we got to shout out the rain too. So much rain in this movie.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're just saying this because like none of the other really characters stand out much, except for I forget the guy who played the cook, but like he gets a few moments in this.
The Christian.
Yeah. Because there's always like just one. Like anytime Dracula comes somewhere, there's always going to be like the one Christian who's just like, I was foretold that this was going to happen. You were foretold that this thing that never ever happened is going to happen on this boat.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also a little ham-fisted how like they introduce his faith of like, take God's name in vain and you won't eat on this ship.
Yeah. And then he's just like, where are them rats? And they're like, what are you talking about? It's like, them ships need to be having rats. Where are them rats?
Yeah, I just, the rest of the crew, they just kind of felt like they were there. I didn't think there was a particular standout. Even the captain, I thought felt pretty flat, pretty one-dimensional for me.
I didn't really share that with Liam Cunningham per se, but I do agree in the sense that I was kind of leading up to the one criticism I have, which is basically, it does kind of feel like pretty much the rest of the cast is just kind of lambs to slaughter. So you're just sort of just waiting for like, all right, here's the asshole one, so he's probably going to die first. And then we're going to get these other two that I don't know anything about them. They're going to introduce like literally one thing about this one guy in a very awkward and ham-fisted way, so his death's a little bit more sad, even though we literally knew nothing about him, 4 seconds ago. And then we, it's just kind of like, okay, we get these out of the way, so now we know that the stakes are established. And yeah, so it does feel a little perfunctory in that sort of way. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's also just kind of them playing to formula as well.
Yeah, I get it. It could have been maybe a little bit more characterization, but at the end of the day, they are there just to be lambs to the slaughter. So I like the way you put it.
Sure. All right. Well, I mean, I think we can wrap her up with the Last Voyage of Demeter. Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be a sequel? Are we going to get Dracula in London?
I mean, I think we've gotten plenty of films with Dracula in London if people want to see it. I don't think, based on the box office, that Last Voyage of Demeter is going to secure a sequel. That could be proven wrong. Who is to say? Do you want to do a quick game of the Rotten Tomatoes game before we go over to Talk to Me?
It's like half the reason I guess on the show. I want to play the game.
All right. So, let's see how many critics have seen or reviewed this film so far. Here we go. All right. So, I'm pulling up the trailer. Come on. There we go. All right. Out of 144 reviews, critics have seen the film and spoken. What are critics saying?
I think the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is 67.
67? You are a decent bit off. Do you want to think are you going to guess it's higher or lower than that?
I will guess hopefully higher.
So right now it's notably lower. Currently it's at 51%.
No. Dang it.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly down the middle. It's at 51%. Critics' consensus is The Last Voyage of Demeter finds a fresh angle on Dracula's oft-told tale, although lackluster execution often undercuts the story's claustrophobic tension. To which,
I mean, it's fair. It's what we've been saying. I think 51 might be a little low. I think I'd probably put it closer to the 60% myself.
Well, what do you think the audience are saying in their score?
Man, I'm never great at knowing with the audience because I feel like I'm always so different. But I think audiences like it. I'm gonna say 69.
Nice. You're much closer on this one. Do you want to guess it's higher or lower than your expectation?
I'm gonna say higher, but if it's close, that's maybe 71, 73.
You're really, really close. It's 74%.
Let's go. See, this is a good movie. People like it. Listen to the audience on this one.
A solidly scary Dracula movie, The Last Voyage of Demeter will reward patient viewers with some intense scenes and plenty of eerie atmosphere, says the audience. So, we got that. I don't know if there's a cinema score for Last Voyage of Demeter. I'm going to look it up right now.
So this is the one that's a letter rating, right?
Yes, yeah. This is from like A to F. And this is the folks in Vegas who have tastes that could vary any which way. Ready whenever you are to guess.
I'm going to guess the guys in Vegas or the people in Vegas did not like this. I'm going to guess they gave it a D+. Are there pluses?
I guess it's worth keeping in mind that like for cinema score, like a C is considered like negative. Like it's pretty rare for a movie to get a D or like a D- or an F.
Then
like
I'll go
D
C.
is less common. C. Yeah, I was gonna say because like C, or rather, I mean F is more common than like a D, I would say. But in any case, I got a B-, which is by cinema score standards not great, but not terrible. It's just kind of average, like okay. Actually kind of low by cinema score standards. Like a B- for them is kind of like a C for us.
But I think that's fair. I think that is where the movie is. This isn't the best movie you'll see this summer, and it's by far not the worst movie you'll see this summer. But it's going to be pretty good. I
mean, it's kind of even though I do think this is not really an August film. It is kind of your traditional sort of August, like studio shrugs their shoulders and goes, "Is this something you guys want?" And people generally say no, but sometimes they say yes. Generally speaking, it seems like, at least as far as box office goes, people are saying no to The Last Voyage of Demeter, but I don't know. Maybe it'll find its life on rental. I don't believe so, but yeah, I mean, similar to you, I found myself, I think this was better than I anticipated, even though I have my issues with it. I do think this is, kind of a fun little throwback horror movie. I would prefer if we got more stuff from Universal like this as opposed to Renfield from earlier this year. But yeah, that's The Last Voyage of Demeter. And now we're ready to talk about a movie called Talk to Me. That's what you're doing right now there, Michael.
Crikey.
Yeah, it's an Australian film. It premiered at Sundance earlier this year. It's the directorial debut of two guys from Australia, as you mentioned. Their names are Danny and Michael Philippou, I think. They're YouTube guys. Did you ever see any of their YouTube stuff, Blair Michael?
Never, not once. Also, did it premiere at Sundance, or I thought it premiered like at the Victoria Film Festival, like an Australian film festival first?
I mean, it may have been the case. I just meant for North American audiences.
Sure.
Yeah. In any case, yeah. I mean, no real prominent stars in this film except for Miranda Otto. Who people may recognize from any number of things. She's kind of a veteran Australian actress, but yeah, I mean, this is one of those, kind of barn burner sort of horror films for A24 in a sense that, every few years I feel like they come out with a summer horror title that, they kind of promote smartly. They try to kind of get to the core audience of, in this case, sort of your younger, like Gen Z, maybe younger millennial type audience who want something a little bit spooky, but maybe something better than you get from your typical Blumhouse film. And while this movie, I don't think it's run away as a sort of Hereditary level success. I mean, it's certainly influenced by that type of film. And I think A24 is really satisfied with what they've gotten so far. It's like already outgrossed. It's pretty small, like $4 million budget from like the very first day it's been released wide. And as we mentioned already, it's got a sequel. People are talking about it. Like even directors like Peter Jackson are going out being like, hey, this is a good movie. Check it out. And so fittingly enough, a lot of people are talking to me. But you and me, Mike, we haven't really talked about it yet. We haven't talked about it on Cinemaholics. I want to hear you talk about it. Tell me what you thought about Talk to Me.
First off, I think it's unfair you're bringing up Peter Jackson for this movie, and you're not talking about Guillermo del Toro and Stephen King promoting
that's right.
Dracula on a boat.
So I did see in the end credits for Last Voyage, Demeter, that Guillermo del Toro got a thanks. So I'm guessing he was probably involved because he was a producer on Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So I think he's already kind of in the bag for Last Voyage, Demeter. But yeah, Stephen King, not someone who is traditionally known for having the most consistent taste, but nevertheless, certainly a badge of honor to have Stephen King be like, this is a cool little horror movie, check it out. But I don't think he's endorsed Talk to Me yet, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, on Talk to Me, this is a movie that definitely, it's elevated horror. It's what you think you're going to get from A24. And I should also mention, I was really excited about it just because one of my best friends is from Australia, lives in Australia. And so I just get hyped about Australian things because I like sharing in his culture and talking to him about it. And maybe the exact opposite experience I had with Dracula on a boat, Last Voyage of the Demeter, I had really high expectations. I thought I was going to really love Talk to Me. And I left the movie just feeling really mixed on it. And ultimately, as the days went by, I realized, I could have gone, I think, a little bit more past, I liked it a little bit. But I found myself towards more on the bottom of the scale of like, I did not like this movie that much. And I understand I'm definitely in the minority here. And I could get into those reasons. But just overall, I think I expected more from it. I only thought it was okay. And I just thought it had a lot of problems.
I'm definitely interested to hear about those. But yeah, I mean, I had sort of ironically the opposite experience, I think, at least as far as like this movie and Voyage Demeter did for you, where I didn't really know, like, I knew this one was getting attention out of Sundance, and I think I might have seen the trailer once or twice before, but it was really only the word of mouth that got me checking it out, like, because I was just kind of like, like, Sundance horror movies, they're kind of hit and miss as far as these things go. Like, I didn't think it was going to be the next Hereditary, but certainly A24 is touting it as such. But yeah, I mean, just enough people were talking about that I was like, yeah, I'll check it out, see what it's like. And I mean, I don't certainly think it's a perfect film. I think there's definitely a lot of issues with it. But I just looked at it as like a pretty nifty little like calling card film. It just proves that these two young filmmakers are really adept at making a pretty tightly wound little horror movie. I think the film really suffers in the script and characterization, but I think the performances are really strong. I think the sound design's great. I think the Foley works really good in this movie. I just think from a production value, this is a really strong debut. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those movies where when I walked out of the theater, I was like, yeah, that was a good movie. That was cool. I was really glad I saw it. But as I've, because I've obviously have been sitting on this one for a little bit longer than Last Voyage to Demeter. It's probably been a little over a week or so now since I've seen the film. And, percolating on it a little bit, I am more inclined to kind of pick the holes and remember some of the inconsistencies that came in through the film. But I want you to speak about those first. Like, what is it about this film that kind of nagged at you and brought it down in your estimation?
Yeah, I think I'm actually in agreement with you on what the issues were. You kind of mentioned them there. I do think it also just kind of highlights the faults of first-time filmmakers. They directed it, they wrote the script, I think, along with somebody else, and it absolutely, I think, suffered from a script level. I think specifically in character motivations, I didn't love the interactions between characters. First off with, I'm going to go look at everybody's names now. Is it Mia? Yeah. Mia, and then the sister, Jade. I just thought that their up and down, back and forth, didn't make sense. It just kind of was what the plot demanded of oh, Jade is now mad at Mia. Oh no, she forgives her. She's helping her now. And then also I laughed in my screening when, two big characters in the movie, the people who, are the owners of the hand, are the instigators of a lot of these things, and they're helping and they're part of this crew trying to find the demons or whatever it is. And then they're just the plot doesn't need us anymore. Here's the hand. We're out of here. And it just, I think that really pulled me out of the movie. And I think the biggest thing for me in horror too is just believability of character motivations and, their interactions and how they're going to tackle whatever this demonic monster beast villain is. And this film just didn't have it. I also just say, blasting too, just the character of Mia herself, I just kind of had a lot of issues with. I don't think she was very likable, which, you don't have to have a likable protagonist. But just the way she was written, I don't think helped the plot a ton, or me as a viewer. That being said, the actress did an amazing job. When I think of this movie and the things I did like about it, I'm really struck by the different scenes of her with, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but a very specific demon. I'm thinking of scenes of her with the hand and wriggling and going through everything. I thought that was really incredible stuff. But I think really just, a script level, character motivation level, this movie just really failed.
Yeah, and Sophie Wilde is the main actress, the woman that plays Mia in the film. And yeah, I definitely echo that statement. Even though I do think the performances all around are quite strong in this, I think her performance in particular is just really quite exceptional. And yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's the highlight of the film for sure. But yeah, I mean, as far as your particular criticisms in terms of character, I didn't really have that issue as much with Mia, and I believe her friend's name is Jade. Yeah, Jade. I felt like their characters felt fairly believable, at least for most of it. And as far as the other teenagers go, I mean, it is sort of a safe explanation, but at the same time, these are kind of dumb teenagers. So it's one of those things where it's what's believable dumb and what's sort of movie dumb. I feel like the movie generally is able to be believably dumb in the sense of yeah, I mean, I could see that these teens were just dumb thrill seekers until shit gets real. And then they're just kind of I don't get my hands off of this thing. I don't want it. But
see,
yeah.
If I can just say right there, shit did get real and they stayed in it for a little bit. And then it's
because
just
they had to.
Okay, maybe.
Well, at that point, I mean, I don't know. I think by the point you're referring to, it's kind of hard for them to just completely be out of it at this point. I mean, I mean, I mean, it is so I think it's fair to say this movie, obviously it's about peer pressure. It's sort of a pretty on the nose sort of metaphor about that. I think it's also, about the trouble of something like drug addiction or this desire to, pressure people into doing these sort of things that are not often for their best interest and kind of indirectly ruin their lives. Certainly a lot of these social media parables, I think is obviously, especially as these two prominent YouTubers are concerned. I think that's apparent here. But yeah, I mean, I think the movie really shines in the first half where it just lets these kids be kids. And like there's a really fun montage where it's just like them basically like getting high off of the sensation of being swept up by like these demons and stuff like that. I think that stuff's really fun. I think when it gets to like the big sort of like their hereditary moment, from that stuff onward, I think even though Sophie Wilde, her performance is amazing, I think the film has trouble kind of justifying a lot of the characters' actions. That seems to be what you're referring to there.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. It's justification of motivations, actions. We're on the same page. It's interesting you bring up the hereditary moment too, because I think both those movies kind of go in different directions at the end, as far as like the wow, the maybe the surprise factor. Where Hereditary haunted me. Hereditary, I would say, is to this day the scariest movie I've watched. I think that movie really sat with me.
It's so good. And then John's always just like, it's just like the 500 movie about grief. And it's just like, maybe so, but like, it's pretty terrifying. Like, I mean, it's one of the few horror movies that actually got under my skin and genuinely scared me. Yeah.
The mom sawing through her own neck and that noise, like, I'm on film. I have goosebumps right now thinking about it. And talk to me, it had an interesting ending. I thought it had one that made me leaving the theater going, okay, that was cool, but by no means was it haunting or the effect that something like Hereditary had on me.
Sure, and I think the bigger issue there is that like Hereditary, especially if you don't know going into it, has this moment, like this oh shit moment where like it's, I think if you're lucky, completely unexpected. And it's just like, well, where is this going to go? Because like, this is totally not what I was expecting this at this point to be what happened. And then like, you're just kind of watching things unfold from there. This movie, like there is a sort of like, oh shit moment, but it's not like completely out of the realm of possibility. It's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, I kind of figured something like this was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to be to this character, but something was going to happen. And the way it ends, while I do really enjoy the last scene, it's like one of those things where it's like, I mean, I don't know really where else this could have gone. Like, I mean, I guess it could have gone for something a little bit sillier or something, but like, there's only really like a few paths where this can go with this premise. I don't think it's like asking to like do anything completely, bewildering after a certain point. I feel like a movie like Hereditary, even though it has a sort of divisive ending, I think it takes more of a risk than this movie ultimately does, which is fine. I think this is, like I said, I think this movie isn't trying to be quite as challenging as something like Hereditary. I think Hereditary just got really lucky as far as like how wide of an audience it got, because that is a fairly, like I said, challenging, difficult film to watch in good ways, I think. But this is obviously going for like a broader appeal, and I think in that respect it works. But yeah, I mean, when it's going for these sort of influences that like it also like seems to be very much harkening something like It Follows. Like actually, I was thinking about that movie a fair bit watching this, especially in the far as like these teenagers sort of banding together to try to find this like supernatural entity and figure out how to fight it and stuff. And yeah, I mean, comparing to those films, I don't think it quite stacks up. But like I said, I look at it more as this is for these directors to prove they can handle directing a film. Like it's a sort of flashy, but good way to kind of put them on the map and showcase their talents. But that also makes it sort of frustrating that the sort of wobbly, more serviceable script doesn't quite utilize the talents as well as far as their directing chops are concerned.
Yeah, it's interesting. It Follows is what you bring up. I was thinking a lot about just The Conjuring, honestly. Maybe because I had just seen Red Door and rewatched the whole series, but that's like dealing with demons, directly and being in different realms with the demons. It was the idea I had, but it just seems like again, bringing it to Hereditary.
I'm sorry, were you talking about Insidious or The Conjuring?
Oh my goodness, Insidious! Why is Patrick Wilson got to be in both those movies, dude? I do that every time. Yeah, definitely. I was talking about Insidious. But it just feels like, at the end of the day, we are kind of making excuses for the filmmakers being like their first movie. But there are, other creators who early on in their careers were able to not just have a good idea, right? That's where I feel like Talk to Me, a really maybe good concept that couldn't get extrapolated into a full arc and theme. Whereas something like Hereditary, very early on, Ari Aster, he is able to take something very interesting and kind of build out from there. And, you know, that's, I think, just what needs to be next for these guys. And I'm excited to see what comes next. But, you know, I think that's what this movie needed.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, when I saw the film, I was not aware, like, obviously the sequel wasn't greenlit. I wasn't aware that this was like the start of an A24 horror franchise, I guess. I was looking at it as like, oh, okay, this is a cool sort of stepping stone movie. They can use their capital from this to do, you know, something better. Or like at least something a little bit grander that like kind of maybe has a sturdier script and allows them to kind of expand as filmmakers in the way that they went from making like these prominent YouTube videos to making a feature film. But now that I'm looking at it as like, okay, this is their, you know, like you said, like Insidious, or this is their like Conjuring or what have you. It makes me a little bit more weary of it. It makes me more just kind of like, okay, well, what exactly are we going to do with this? Because I don't think this concept on its own really lends itself to like a franchise outside of like obviously it being passed down from person to person. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll certainly be curious to see what the sequel's like whenever it comes to be. I mean, I don't know what they have in mind, but it seems like they're very excited about it. And, you know, I do wish them well. Like you said, I mean, I think this is a really strong showcase for their talents, and I would like to see where they go from here. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's like a solid like B-level A24 horror film. It doesn't quite match the A strengths of like It Follows or Hereditary, but you know, for August or July or whatever, I think that's fine. Yeah.
C+, B-. I think the franchise I compare it to as well is, you know, and it's not anything similar to, but Saw, right? Because that was one movie that had an interesting concept that I think a lot of audiences really enjoyed, and boy, could they not repeat that in any of the sequels. That was an idea that just could not extrapolate. And that Talk to Me?
I don't know. I will say, we'll find out. Yeah, I mean, I will say the new Saw looks kind of interesting. I mean, I'm not, I have, you know, no real firm confidence that it's going to be good, but at least it has a more interesting concept. I don't know. Are you a consistent watcher of Saw, or did you give up earlier in the series?
No, I'm a consistent watcher. I even watched Spiral with Chris Rock. I'll put them all out. Do you know is Lee Warnell involved with the newest one?
No, he said he gave up, I think, after 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's our kind of you know, a little brief, but you know, nevertheless stimulating conversation about Talk to Me. Is there anything else in particular you wanted to talk about with Talk to Me?
I would love to see more movies coming out of Australia. I think there's a really great culture down there. I do think that this movie, you know, highlights a lot of that and has its own language to a bit. I love seeing Polynesian characters in movies where they aren't just a token Polynesian character. I think that's just representation the screen doesn't get a ton. So I did really appreciate that and hope to see more stuff coming out of that great nation, country, continent.
Sweet. Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of said my piece about it already. Yeah. With that, we'll just go right on ahead.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Will. You got it. You know, someone's got time on Saturday. There's 2 showings. They're at the same time. What movie are you telling them to go see? Okay. Is it Talk to Me or Dracula?
I think Talk to Me is the easier sell. And I think they're more likely, like if it's just some random person, I think they're probably more likely to get something out of Talk to Me as opposed to Last Voyage, Demeter. Because, I mean, you do have to be sort of patient with Last Voyage, Demeter. It's not like a slow burn, but it is a type of film that if you want something more traditional as far as horror movies go, I think Talk to Me is a safer bet.
I do think you got to be pretty patient and Talk to Me too, though, to be fair.
I guess so. Yeah, it is a lot of talking at the beginning of the film. Although the beginning, the cold open is really strong. It's like a cool little oneer at the beginning. You know, I like that.
Yeah,
yeah.
You're right. That is cool.
Yeah.
That very much feels like first-time filmmakers, like they get a big budget, and it's like day one of the shoot. Like, what do you want to do? We want to do a oneer. So I do love that.
Right. It is showy, but yeah, I mean, I think it's well done. Pretty smooth, good stuff. All right, Rotten Tomatoes game, and then we can call it a day. All right, this is out of 208 or 268 reviews. Actually, more than I anticipated, to be honest. What did you think the Rotten Tomatoes score is for Talk to Me?
Critics, I think, really like it. I'm gonna say 80. I'll go 89.
So actually, they're even higher. You are correct, but they're higher than that. It's currently certified fresh at 95%.
Wow.
Consensus says, with a gripping story and impressive practical effects, Talk to Me spins a terrifically creepy 21st century horror yawn built on classic foundations. I do want to mention. Go ahead.
I think we're both about to say the same thing. The practical effects, the makeup on the demons were really, really great.
Right. And I mean, just like the gore and like the practical effects for like the makeup goes, I thought was really well done as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about the audience score. Obviously by this point, more audiences have seen the film. I think, like you said, they have probably more expectations because of the reviews. But what do you think? What do you think the audience score is right now?
I also think it's going to be pretty high, but I think maybe because of the reviews, and I think some general audiences go see an elevated horror movie, they feel disappointed. I'll say 92. So
your 10 off is 82%.
Oh, not 102?
No, yeah, I know. Talk to Me has a fright-filled, fast pace, and often unpredictable story that'll keep you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. I don't know if I'd call it fast-paced per se, but I get what they're saying.
I wouldn't say it at all, so I guess we're different in that regard.
Yeah. Also, I mean, like we said, I think often unpredictable story is it's a little generous as far as these things go. I am curious to see if this movie has a cinema score. By this point, it might, because it has gone pretty wide at this point. But at the same time, I do not know for sure. Oh, it does have a cinema score. You want to guess what it is?
Yeah, I'll go a B on this one.
You are very close. Do you think it's higher or lower?
Lower, B minus.
Nope, it is higher. B plus.
God, sucks.
Which
wasn't close on any of them.
Good. I mean, it's not. I mean, I think by most metrics, like that would be considered like really good. I think by cinema scores, it's like, yeah, good, solid. It's not. I don't know. I feel like an A minus would be like them loving the film, but at this point, it's just kind of like, yeah, they like it. They're definitely sold. There's definitely something that rubbed them the wrong way, but overall, they had a good time with it. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Well, there. I'm hearing them call. Will, your boat, it's ready, it's about to leave port. You better get on it.
See, I thought you were going to do a talk to me thing where it's like you can hear the hand speaking to me and, my hand going to click stop record or something, but we can do the boat thing if you prefer. All right. Looks like Mike is convulsing at the moment.
I was getting everything I had. I was
Mike
even trying to put my eyes
the
back.
Dead, I think.
I saw Elvis. He said he did not like Austin Butler's performance.
Oh, that's a little disappointing. Do you think he's gonna like Priscilla?
Oh yeah. I'm gonna love it.
Okay, it's kind of surprising considering it seems like a pretty damning portrait of you, Mr. Presley.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well,
that's everything I got.
I'm just gonna end it there. Yeah, that's all.
Thanks,
I got.
Everybody.